Welcome back. Here, if you watched my last hyperspeed video of this painting, it was about over an hour's worth of laying in the colors for the flowers. And since then, I've done another hour's work on these flowers. In this video, these colors over here are looking real muted, but they're not. It's just the angle of the camera. So the colors that I've used here are, I still like burnt carmine, and I've got a quinacridone rose, I've got a brilliant rose, a cadmium red orange, cadmium yellow medium, and I had lemon yellow on here. I see I've used that up. Viridian green, sap green, titanium white. This is gray violet, or violet gray. I've added to the palette a transparent orange, oxide orange, a transparent oxide yellow, and yellow ochre, pale, and ultramarine blue is in here. So when I talked in my painting video about paints, what we end up with is our cool reds and our warm reds. Our warm yellows and the lemon yellow that was on here is our cool yellow, and our cool green and our warm green. And I have basically the ultramarine blue is a cool blue, and this is considered more neutral because it's on the violet side. Violets are more neutral in temperature. This is a cobalt violet right there. So, but in the painting, coming in to do the flowers, I started with my dark values, but then I came in with my cool values, like in here, these cool red violets. All the cool colors in these reds, these cool, deeper colors, came in with the darker, cooler greens. And then I gradually warm up into, like from these violet reds, I go into a warm red, into an orange red, into the yellows, right? And in the violets down here, I go from these cooler neutral violets into, well, there's some red violets, more reds, but these actually get a little cooler, violet to a blue violet. And there's still some blue flowers that need to come back in through here. I laid them in initially when I did the value study, and started, after that, came in and put some color in. Same with the greens, the cool greens. Went into some warmer greens like the sap greens, and then added yellows like lemon yellows to them, and then actually ended up some white into these greens also. The same back here. This is a really nice warm green. Well, it has some cool tones, and then it warms up into some still kind of coolish because there's lemon yellow. I didn't use the warm yellow. I used the cooler yellow, so this does stay cooler. And so anyway, and even with the yellows, I have a warm yellow that goes into the lemon yellow, into a yellow that has white into it, which lightens it and cools it off even further. There's still a little bit more work to do in the flowers, in the floral region, but I want that to dry, and it's been a while, but I want that to dry completely before I come back into it. I don't know, we may tackle it today. I never know what I'm going to do. But today I want to work on the horse. And first I have to find my image. Isn't that funny? So I'm going to start with the darks in the horse. And I want to make, he's got a fairly dark mane. It's a bay horse, which they're fairly dark in their manes. Some of them appear to be black. I'm mixing my burnt carmine with a blue, and it's going to turn a fairly dark violet, and this color will glare. And I may add another color to it. I don't use black paint, which I've talked about. I can take my Viridian Green with my Quinacridone Rose and also get a very dark color. I think I'm going to add, excuse me, I need my green. Tricky, huh? I almost put my palette up into my painting. I'm going to add some more of the Viridian Green because this color I made, I'm showing you that I could take this burnt carmine and a dark blue and get a fairly dark color, right? But I can also take this Quinacridone Rose and this Viridian Green, and it will also give me a dark color. So it just depends on what I want. Now this horse has the wind blowing into his face, and so I am continuing with that feeling of the wind blowing his hair. I might modify this color a bit. It seems to be a bit on the violet side. So I'm actually going to be, I'm just trying to get it down into a dark color that doesn't feel, and that appears actually a little bit on the green side now. And I could put out burnt umber, which I may end up doing in the end. But right now I just want to work in this mane. And his mane actually comes clear down off of his shoulder down here, which I didn't put into the original sketch. I'm gonna mix my red and my green together, a little bit warmer red to give me a little bit warmer dark. I'm building out his mane, keeping in mind that he does have the wind blowing through it it's coming at him. He's got his face into the wind. And he's got quite a bit of hair. He is a wild Mustang. And the photograph was one I found on Pinterest, and I'm going to go back and find out who the owner of the photograph is. But because I'm using it for reference, I'm not copying it exactly. I've changed it up quite a bit. But so now, as I've got my darks working, I'm going to come in and reestablish or bring in my darks into the right color. I'm tending to like my Cad Red with my Viridian Green as my dark here because it has a warmth to it. It may not show up on the video, but it does tend to have a warmth to it that I would like to have come across in this. I don't want just a dark dark color. Kind of bringing in some darks back in here because he's got a hoof still back in there. Kind of has one out in here through the grasses too. I may or may not play that up. He also has a hoof back over in here that I feel like I want to articulate just a little bit peeking through, just because the flowers aren't going to take care of everything, cover up everything. He's got a lot of hair, this horse. This was a filbert. It's a filbert, which is the shape, but it's a number 4. That's the size, number 4. I'm going to come in with a little bit smaller brush. This is a number 2 filbert. Happens to be a Winsor Newton brush. The other one was a Grand Prix by Renaissance. Nice brush. Winsor Newton makes a nice brush too. So I'm going to continue with my darks. I just needed to bring in a little smaller brush so that I could articulate some of these areas. I use the biggest brush I can use in an area that I have control of it. If I lose control of an area, I usually will downsize into a little bit smaller brush. And these darks look really harsh right now, but they will be modified. I'm going to drop this eye down just a bit. And it helps soften the eye. Bringing in the darks into the ear. I work in this, my palette, my paints, my brushes are all right here on this easel. And so everything gets really close. That's our life right now. Everything is just in a lot smaller area. And it's surprising what you can get away with. That everything you realize you don't really have to have. And I have painted in laundry rooms, I have painted in a garage, I have painted in my living room, had to tear it down every day. This one's kind of that way too. It's in the middle of our living room. And you notice I changed this angle a bit. I redraw all the way through. If I don't like the way something's looking, I redraw it and get it how I want it. I'm liking this little bit warmer color that is the cad red and the Viridian green, where it's not so black looking now. And I'm going to use that color to now start bringing in some of his darker darks. As you can see, once again, I'm holding my brush like a baton. I don't come in and choke up on it like a pencil, because I like to use my whole arm, my wrist, and so where I brought in the values in the original sketch, I'm still following all that value study. I am still following. I'm going to change colors here because those are my darkest darks. I really don't need to put in a lot of darks. I'm going to get a bigger brush. I think I'm going to go back to this one and wipe it out. This one I started with, which was a number 4 Filbert. These are all bristle brushes. I use bristle brushes primarily until I get into like some blending. And I'm taking my transparent oxide orange, which is like a burnt sienna, and I'm going to kind of start laying that color in and see if it's going to work in some of these areas. I'm really kind of doing a color test at the moment to see how that works. Okay. I think that's going to work out okay. I'm going to add burnt sienna to my palette. I don't know, my palette's a mess. But I have some viable color on there still. So burnt sienna is going to be a test here too. I want to. Okay. All right. I'm going to come back to my dark shadows areas, and I'm going to take transparent oxide orange, and I'm going to add a touch of blue to it to gray it down to get into these areas here, because that's a pretty warm color. It's a pretty hot color, and it's too hot for my shadow areas. So I'm adding a touch of the ultramarine blue. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I usually paint till I can't paint anymore. All right. I'm happy with that color, transparent oxide, cooling it off with ultramarine blue. Chest muscles on horses. Pretty amazing, actually. People say, well, how do you know what color to put in there? You know what, I don't till I test it. But with making my color charts, you know, playing with my colors on my canvas palette, my canvas pad, I kind of have an idea of what the colors are going, how they're going to work together, what they look like, and you get a feel for it, and I really recommend it. Because colors react to the colors around them, and they look different than what's on your palette once you get them up on your canvas. And so I'm just adding varying degrees of blue into my transparent oxide orange, which, like I said, it's very similar to burnt sienna, but it would be too warm in these areas to just use the burnt sienna. I don't have raw umber. Raw umber probably would have worked. Another color called asphaltum works well for animals that have kind of cooler areas on them, like actually mountain lions and coyotes have a lot of cooler areas into their coats. And but this color works the same way. This mixture, I should say, is working the same way. I'm trying to be aware of the length of the video, because what I realize is the longer the video, the longer it takes to load. And sometimes it just take forever to load, just depending on how many people, I guess, are uploading to Facebook. And that's what I'm talking about here, is more Facebook. I think I can get it on I mean, onto YouTube. Gosh, painting and thinking, talking. Huh. And I'm going over these flowers, but I can go back over them again with the flower colors. But it just is something that I need to kind of lay in, because there is parts of this horse that are behind these flowers that they does need to go in. And nothing is set in stone, okay? So I'm double checking. What am I looking for at this point? I'm looking for anything else that might be in this value and these colors, and I'm just playing and playing to. That's a little bit too warm right there. So I'm going to cool that off a bit, just a bit. I can also get too cool. Such a fine line. There's such a fine line with these values. The temperature. If everything is too intense and all the same value, like in these flowers, if they were all bright reds and yellows and bright pinks, you would have no dimension. They would all appear equally pushing forward, and they would not have dimension to them. So I'm just what I call a dry scrumble. What I've got on my brush is working quite well. I'm happy with it as far as the colors that are going on here, and helping me keep my values from light to dark. This value on his flank over here does change a bit. I'm kind of filling in these lighter areas with some of these darks. Just because the horse is still behind all this. Okay. A little bit of a darker, cooler value over here. And he does have a little bit cooler values happening here. I do the darks into the halftones, and I save the lights for last. And it sometimes, and usually, the cool tones, oopsie, that should be a light right in there. I got that at dark. I'm just going to make a note to myself. It won't really pull it off. This is a note to me that that's a lighter value. I'm just going to dry scrumble now some of this into here and set all these values back. I'm warming them up a bit at the same time. I like transparent oxides colors. They're a carbon organic pigment, and I like the transparent because I can just scrumble this transparent color over this right here, set the value back without really losing anything when it comes to form. And see, that's a pretty bright color. I can come in here now and lay this on here, and we start to get the local color of this horse. These beautiful rich copper tones that are in his hide. See, isn't that pretty? That's a beautiful color. And he lightens up into a little bit more golden tones in the full lights. I get into this darker paint, I'm wiping off my brush. That's what I'm doing. So his form, with keeping the shadows and the values correct, temperature correct, his form is really hanging in there well. He becomes very much three-dimensional, and even before we get very far into this one I'm going to cool off a bit when I come back at it. Right now I'm want to get that color in there. So I'm going to come back with a little bit of this blue into this mixture. I'm going to flatten this plane of his face by cooling that off, setting the side of his face back away from the light. Little cooler area here. What's interesting is this horse has gotten younger the more I've painted on him, and I think he's kind of cute. He's kind of turned into a colt, which I'm okay with that. There's a I was kind of heading for, but when the sketch first goes on, because there's not a lot of dimension, but he's just real cute, and I kind of like it that he's a colt. It is springtime, and all these flowers and colts lay down quite a bit, and I just think it worked out well, honestly. Hopefully I can hang on to it. Never any guarantees. If I overwork it, I could end up losing that, so we'll try not to lose that. I'm moving to a transparent oxide yellow. I want to see how this plays out over in here. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to that because I'm kind of looking for a slightly greenish color. Back over in here. I just want to cool that off. Put a little bit of white into it. Let's see what this does. Okay. I added white. I took the transparent oxide yellow, French ultramarine blue, and added a touch of white to it because he is reflecting some of the colors around him. And we can see back underneath here into his flank, and then he actually has some leg that kind of comes out into there. He also has this color up in here. And he has a little bit down in here, reflecting the colors of the plants around him. temperature change. You see how we change the temperature through there? And I find that this color will probably work pretty well for around his face also. Some of these colors through here. I don't mind it. And put a little bit of red into neutralizing that, just a bit, graying it down. I know, I get accused of seeing colors that aren't there, but that's okay. I think it adds a lot of dimension and interest to a painting to maybe play up some of those colors that are not so easily seen. Okay, and he does have this hoof down in here that I'm going to use this color for. He's kind of half laying on it. There's some colors that play over in here. He also has some of this over in here, another hoof. So I didn't worry about building the hoof up too much initially. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to add a little bit of this color over in here and some down in here. Reflected lights. He's coming along pretty good. If you build the basic structure of your subject matter, coming in and adding the color becomes, if you've dealt with all the composition and the values up front, it is so much easier to come in and address the colors like at this point. The values are giving me a map. This whole value